Before dawn, the village lay quiet under a blanket of mist. That was the hour when the medieval farmer's day began. Unlike modern life, which offers clocks and alarms, the rhythm of a medieval farmer's day was dictated by nature itself, the rising sun, the crowing of roosters, and the distant lowing of cattle. In a small thatched cottage at the edge of a field, the farmer stirred from a straw mattress, the cold stone floor biting through the thin woolen blanket. He rose carefully, mindful of the creaking beams overhead, and opened the shutters to let in the first grey light. The world outside was still damp from the night, and the faint smell of smoke from neighbouring cottages hinted that others had already begun their day. Breakfast was simple and utilitarian, a meal designed more to fuel the labour ahead than to delight the palate. A bowl of coarse rye porridge, sometimes sweetened with a drizzle of honey or flavoured with herbs from the garden, was accompanied by a chunk of bread. Meat was rare, reserved for festivals or special occasions. The bulk of the farmer's diet consisted of grains, vegetables, legumes, and seasonal fruits. Dairy was a staple, and a sip of fresh milk or a slice of soft cheese provided protein for the arduous day. Sometimes he might have a small piece of salted fish preserved from previous weeks, or a few eggs if the hens were generous that morning. By the time the sun fully rose, the farmer had already ventured into the fields. Medieval agriculture was a world of manual labour, dependent on sweat, skill, and knowledge passed down through generations. The tools were simple yet effective: a wooden plough with iron tips, a spade, a scythe, and sometimes a sickle. Horses or oxen pulled heavier ploughs, while the farmer guided the animals with practiced hands, ensuring the furrows were straight and deep enough to receive the seed. In spring, the fields were prepared meticulously, stones removed, and the soil loosened. The timing of planting was critical. Too early, and frost could kill the crop; too late, and the harvest would not mature before winter. Weeding and tending the crops occupied much of the farmer's morning. In medieval times, there were no chemical fertilizers or pesticides, so maintaining healthy crops required vigilance. Every weed pulled was a victory over scarcity, every pest driven away a small triumph. The farmer knew the patterns of the seasons intimately, reading the clouds and the soil, listening to the wind and the birds. Nature was both ally and adversary. Rain could save a struggling crop, but too much could rot the grain. Sunlight nourished the vegetables and grains, but drought demanded resourcefulness and careful rationing of water drawn from nearby wells or streams. Midday brought a brief respite. The farmer returned to the cottage or a shaded spot in the field to eat a modest lunch, often bread dipped in cheese or broth, perhaps a piece of preserved meat, and water from the well. Unlike modern meals, which often last an hour or more, the medieval farmer's break was short. Every moment spent resting was a moment away from the relentless rhythm of toil. Children, if they were old enough, might accompany him to the field or tend to livestock nearby, learning the intricate skills that would sustain their family for years to come. Education for a child in a farming village was practical rather than scholarly, sowing seeds, milking cows, repairing fences, and observing nature carefully. The afternoon was often the most demanding period of the day. Tasks varied by season. In spring, planting and ploughing dominated. In summer, the farmer's attention turned to watering, weeding, and watching for signs of blight or disease. Fall demanded tireless harvesting, carrying sheaves of grain to the barn, threshing and storing food for the coming winter. Each task required coordination with others in the village, particularly during planting and harvest seasons. Medieval villages often operated on a communal system known as the open field system, where large fields were divided into strips and shared among families. Collaboration was necessary, for no individual could manage an entire harvest alone. Festivals and communal meals marked the milestones of work, But for much of the year, the labour was relentless. Livestock required constant care. Chickens needed feeding, cows required milking, and pigs had to be kept from rooting through crops. Animals were not only a source of food, but also of labour and income. A horse could pull ploughs, a cow could provide milk, and pigs could be fattened for winter meals. Farmers had to understand the behaviour of each species, knowing when to feed, breed, or separate animals. Every sick or weak animal threatened the family's survival, and veterinary care was limited to folk remedies or the knowledge of experienced villagers. Herbs, poultices, and simple surgeries were used in an attempt to keep animals healthy. Evening brought a slow return from the fields. The sun's descent was both a cue for rest and a reminder of unfinished labour. The farmer tended to smaller domestic chores, repairing tools, mending fences, collecting firewood, and ensuring the livestock were secure for the night. Darkness in the medieval world was absolute and dangerous. Without artificial light beyond candles, lanterns, or a hearth fire, work could not continue after sunset. Predators roamed the forests, and thieves might take advantage of poorly lit areas. Safety depended on vigilance, and families often gathered around the hearth for warmth, food, and storytelling. The evening meal was modest but shared. Bread, cheese, soup made from vegetables and legumes, and perhaps some meat, if the household was fortunate, provided the calories necessary to recover from the day's labour. Wine or ale was sometimes consumed, particularly if water was contaminated. Conversation centred on the day's work, the weather, the health of animals, and the happenings of the village. Stories of saints, folklore, or moral lessons were told to children, both for entertainment and education. Life in a medieval village was governed by cycles of work, food, prayer, and community, each reinforcing survival, cooperation, and resilience. After the meal, the family prepared for bed. The straw-filled mattress offered little comfort, and the night could be long and cold. Some villagers kept small fires to ward off the chill, while others relied on thick woolen blankets. The farmer might lie awake, listening to the wind through the thatched roof, the distant barking of dogs, or the croak of frogs in the nearby stream. Sleep was precious, yet essential, for the body would demand early rising again. Preparation for the next day began mentally even as eyes closed, planning which fields to tend, which animals needed attention, and what repairs might be necessary before dawn. Religious observance punctuated daily life. Medieval farmers lived in a world steeped in faith. Church bells marked the hours, and prayers were offered for protection, bountiful harvests, and the health of family and community. Saints' days, holy festivals, and other celebrations offered brief relief from toil. Pilgrimages, or fairs, might also allow for trade, socialization, and the exchange of survival knowledge. The calendar, both liturgical and agricultural, guided daily existence, ensuring that work and devotion remained intertwined. Seasonal variations profoundly shaped the life of the medieval farmer. Winter demanded preservation and rationing, spring required planting and preparation, summer called for vigilance and maintenance, and autumn necessitated speed and endurance for harvest. The farmer's skills evolved through observation and inheritance, as families passed down strategies for coping with droughts, floods, pests, and disease. Knowledge of herbs, natural remedies, crop rotation, and animal husbandry was critical. Failure to follow these practices could result in starvation, loss of livestock, or ruin. Social hierarchy also influenced survival. Most farmers were serfs or tenants, obligated to provide labour or produce to their lord in addition to managing their own household. This system added pressure and required careful planning to meet both obligations and personal sustenance needs. Festivals and communal labour provided both relief and social cohesion, fostering bonds that enhanced survival. knowledge was shared, and assistance in emergencies ensured the resilience of the village as a whole. Despite the relentless labour, moments of quiet reflection existed. Watching the sun rise over the fields, feeling the wind through crops, or observing the first signs of ripening fruit offered a sense of connection to the land and the cycles of life. The medieval farmer understood, perhaps more acutely than many today, the fragile balance between human effort and natural forces. Each successful harvest, each healthy animal, each meal prepared was a triumph of endurance, skill, and adaptation. By night, the village was silent once more. The workday concluded. Yet survival required constant attention, vigilance, and adaptability. Medieval farming was not merely an occupation, it was a way of life, a continuous negotiation with nature, the seasons, and social structures. It demanded resilience, ingenuity, and cooperation. In these daily rhythms, punctuated by toil, prayer, and celebration, the medieval farmer navigated a complex, demanding world, ensuring life for himself, his family, and his community against the uncertainties of the era.